Hi, welcome to Film Fiend. My name is Seb, and today I'm reviewing The Odyssey. So, first of all, I guess I better address the apparent controversy or bullshit political discourse that surrounds this film. Surrounds it online, anyway. I doubt the average person cares about or even knows about the identity politics type rhetoric that shrouds this film online. But unfortunately, it seems to be part and parcel of the online discourse now, so here's my view on this stuff. The complaints that have been leveled against this film, even before its release, are essentially threefold. They consist of the accents, the race swapping of Helen of Troy, and the inclusion of Elliot Page. So to start off with the accents, every character in this film has an American accent, which has annoyed some people. But did people want it to be in Greek? The people who are complaining about the accents, did they want the entire film to be in the Greek language? An ancient Greek at that? Because I doubt they do. I doubt they would want the whole film to be subtitled. And so if they don't want it to be subtitled, then what's the alternative? I mean, they could have maybe been speaking English with Greek accents or something, but that's no more accurate. So they may as well just let the actors use their native accents. And also, you don't tend to hear these same complaints against other similar films like Troy or Gladiator, for example. But again, what's the solution to this problem? I don't think there is one really. Short of the entire cast learning Greek or speaking English with a Greek accent, there's no ultimate solution that would appease everyone. I mean, I suppose they could have just cast only Greek actors, but this is an American English production. It's a Christopher Nolan film, so that was never going to be the case. So for me, the accents didn't bother me in the slightest. As for the casting of Lupita Nyong'o as Helen of Troy, first off I'll say that in my opinion, race swapping a character only really matters if the character was a real life person. Race only matters in a political or historical context, but Helen of Troy is a fictional character. So for me, it's just not a problem. Although I know people will say, but it's a story that takes place in ancient Greece, and so even though it's fictional, the people in the film still have to be representative of the types of people who would have existed in that time period. And that's fair enough, except for the fact that black Africans did exist in ancient Greece. They were referred to as Ethiopians. One cursory Google search will tell you that. They were integrated into cities like Athens and were part of the populace due to trade with Egypt, Libya, and sub-Saharan Africa. Also, black Africans often appeared in Greek mythology, even sometimes occupying heroic roles. For example, in Homer's The Iliad, Memnon, the king of Ethiopia, is depicted as a prominent warrior who travelled to defend Troy during the Trojan War. So because of this, it is totally possible that Helen of Troy could have been an African woman, if she had actually existed. So for me, that's no big deal. Also, Lupita Nyong'o is in this film for like 5 minutes, and because of her limited screen time, they needed an actor who would bring impact to the role, and Nyong'o is perfect for that because she's a powerful performer, and an important character trait of Helen of Troy is that she was a very striking looking woman. Now, beauty is of course subjective, we could debate that stuff all day long, but having Helen of Troy not be Caucasian when basically the rest of the cast is, was actually a really clever decision because it makes her stand out. Lupita Nyong'o is a striking looking woman anyway, but set against the backdrop of Caucasian people, she stands out even more. And so that makes Helen of Troy extremely noticeable, memorable, and conspicuous, which is great because she's supposed to be like that. She's the face that launched 1,000 ships, as they say. So you've got to be a very visually striking woman to have that effect on people. And so for me, Nyong'o is great casting in that regard. And I guarantee they made the choice for that reason, and not because of an arbitrary woke race swap quota or something. And finally, we come to the issue of Elliot Page being cast in this film. Now, when I first heard about this, it was said that Page would be playing Achilles. But I thought, you know what, that actually makes sense because Achilles was described as looking fairly androgynous, so no problem there. But subsequently, it was revealed that Page was actually playing a random soldier named Sinon. There's probably still people out there who think Page is playing Achilles. We've known for months that this is not the case. This is how misinformed the perpetually online people are, which is ironic when one quick Google search would enlighten them. But anyway, this is all because Page is trans. And I guess some people just have a problem with that in general and so don't want to see Page in a film. But a couple of things about that. First of all, in ancient Greece, the lines between men and women were much more blurred. The culture viewed gender as fluid, and Greek myths are filled with figures who transcended the binary. Also, Paige is playing a very boyish, young, and kind of feeble character, so that casting works absolutely fine. But also, who cares anyway? Why does it matter? Page is just a human being who exists, who is also an actor, and who has worked with Nolan before. And I put it to you that that's the only reason Page was cast in this film anyway, because they've worked together before. And we know that Nolan likes to cast from the same pool of actors that he's worked with previously. And again, who cares? If you think you care about something like this, ask yourself why. In my opinion, people have been coerced into ostensibly caring about these pointless things by the loudest voices on social media. And these people are only doing it for clicks anyway. They don't actually care. And all this outrage was preemptive. After watching the film, the last thing you'll be focusing on is that Elliot Page was in it. Between them, Nyong'o and Page's screen time consists of about 10 minutes in a 3-hour film. People who apparently care about this stuff are losers whose minds are clouded by identity politics, making them focus on something totally insignificant. I'm kind of embarrassed for the people online who were complaining about all this stuff because all they had to go off was the trailer, and they made a whole song and dance about it, and yet those elements make up like 10 minutes out of a 3-hour film. It just goes to show that this is what social media is like these days. This preliminary indignation at something that ultimately doesn't matter and isn't even as prevalent as they assume it is. It's fucking embarrassing. Anyways, now that I've got all that out of the way, I can get on with the review proper. So, I thought this film was great. It was amazing. I mean, how could it not be? It's one of the best directors tackling one of the greatest stories. Also, I will say straight up that the things that sometimes bother people about Nolan films, like the non-linear storytelling and the indecipherable dialogue, are not a problem here. The sound mix is great. You can clearly hear every line of dialogue. And even though it has some of that non-linear stories within stories and flashbacks within flashbacks stuff going on, it's never confusing or convoluted. I'd say it's probably Nolan's most accessible and palatable film. What Nolan crafts here is beyond immersive. I was locked in for the entire runtime. It's that kind of immersion where you don't know what planet you're on anymore when you come out of the cinema. It's like a shock to the senses when you realize that you're still in this dimension. What he created is just absolute magic. The film looks amazing, obviously. It's visually spectacular. It's the definition of epic, with vast landscapes and massive sprawling environments that look so tactile, complemented by a story that is so human and so universally relatable. It's a story about love, about a homecoming, a return journey, coming of age, and about how war corrupts. The scale of this film is astonishing. It's awe-inspiring stuff, and they used no green screen. Everything was shot on location. And of course, it's the first film ever to be shot entirely on IMAX. They even had to get special soundproofing blimps made to encase the cameras because IMAX cameras are notoriously loud. So all the technical elements are really impressive and it's impeccably crafted as expected. But what struck me most about this film was that even though it exists in a mythological and fantastical modality, it has such a grounded quality. It feels so real and so human, and the fantastical elements feel grounded in a realistic and tangible world. The scene with the Cyclops is incredible. It's like a horror sequence. The creature is genuinely scary and formidable. They used puppetry and clever perspective tricks to make the Cyclops feel realistic. And it's just so frightening because it looks so real. It has a genuine weight and heft to it. And you feel like you're in that cave with those men. I think that sequence is going to go down as an iconic and seminal moment in modern epic filmmaking. It's extremely striking imagery that'll stay with you. Also, the gods in this film, like they were in the film Troy, are absent, as in they don't manifest physically, but it's very much this thing of like the gods walk amongst us. The gods in this film are the elements, the thunder, the wind, the waves, which again is such a clever way of keeping the story feeling fantastical whilst making it feel grounded in realism. The score from Ludwig Göransson is fantastic as well, as expected, but my favourite moments from the score weren't the big bombastic pieces over the action sequences, but actually the quieter moments, especially during the opening act. I had heard that the opening of the film was kind of slow, but I don't think it was. For me, the opening movements set everything up so well. It introduces you to the characters and the setting whilst easing you into the story, and crucially, it's all sewn together by the score. Göransson uses lutes and old instruments that we're not used to hearing that create this soundscape that feels warm and homely. It creates a sense of familiar warmth that grounds the introduction to this story in something human and relatable. But then, of course, as the story progresses, the score becomes much more grand and majestic with a real sense of building tension. The cast all give great performances, but there's so many characters that even though it's an absolutely stacked cast, the majority of the recognizable faces are only in it for like 10, 15 minutes apiece. Everyone brings their A game though, but the standouts for me were obviously Matt Damon. He's just such a solid actor, and he brings this kind of stoic humanity and pathos to the role of Odysseus. He looks weathered and heroic, like an old washed up hero, but he has this sincerity and relatability. It's the perfect role for him at this point in his career. Also, Anne Hathaway is great, especially in the latter stages of the film. It's got to be one of her best performances. But the most surprising standout performance for me was John Leguizamo. He was so good, and he plays a pivotal role. His character is involved in many of the key scenes and important character moments. He's in it much more than I expected, and it's a really important performance. Also, Samantha Morton pops up in a very memorable scene, but I won't say anything more about that. On the other hand, there is performances that really don't matter in terms of who's playing the role. Benny Safdie, for example, plays Agamemnon, but that role could have been played by anyone really. And you've got Mia Goth in there as well, but she's barely in it. And Charlize Theron is just Charlize Theron. She doesn't bring anything outstanding to her role, so you're not exactly going to be blown away by those specific performances. Also, incidentally, the film Troy really can't be seen as a prequel to this film, or the Odyssey can't be seen as a sequel to Troy, because Troy changes some important character moments, most notably Menelaus being killed, because he's very much alive in this film. So it wouldn't make sense to watch these two films back to back and expect a coherent through narrative. Troy definitely needs to be viewed as a standalone film. It's definitely not a companion piece to this film. Anyway, the last 30 or 40 minutes of the Odyssey are especially enthralling. It all comes together in classic Nolan fashion, and after witnessing the grueling nature of the epic journey, how it culminates in the finale is just so gripping, riveting, and satisfying. Also, I kept having this feeling throughout the film of like, I swear I've seen this before. I know this story. And that's because this is the oldest story that exists. It's the story that contains all other stories. It's informed so many other great works that it feels familiar. It feels absolutely essential. It was reminding me of Jason and the Argonauts. I was getting sense memories from watching that film when I was younger. And whether it's something like that, or literally the episode of The Simpsons where they parody the Odyssey, we have all in one form or another experienced this story before. Nolan just managed to bring it to life, and that's what makes this film so incredible. Is the source material teamed with a director and a crew who have the skills to adapt it in a way that does justice to the epic and fundamental nature of the story. And that's what they achieved. They synthesized magic, and it's absolutely incredible to be able to sit in a cinema in the year 2026 and watch an adaptation of a story that's basically 3,000 years old. It predates science and religion, and at one point it was probably passed down only verbally before Homer solidified it. It's kind of beautiful and poetic to know that we're all connected to our ancient ancestors through this story. They probably heard it around a campfire during the Bronze Age, whilst we're experiencing it in an epoch with technology that would have been considered by them to be actual magic. Anyway, this film will probably be considered to be one of the most incredible modern epics ever made. It feels like an old film, but made with modern cameras and sound design. This film is a cinematic behemoth, with some of the most striking and memorable sequences that I've seen in a film in recent memory. And there's imagery in here that will stay with me for a long time. It was amazing. I loved it. So that was my review of the Odyssey. If you like this, then leave me a like. I'd really appreciate it, and it will help the channel. Obviously, I'm still a new channel, so any engagement would be appreciated. Also, consider subscribing and hitting the notification bell. But regardless, thanks so much for watching, and hopefully I'll see you in the next one.